لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ هُدَاهُمْ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ. Not upon you is responsibility for their guidance, but Allah guides whomsoever that He wills. Now we see that, sometimes when we're giving charity, we want to make sure that the people that we're giving to, they are good people. And sometimes what happens is that we give, we help them financially, and later on we find out that, they also commit certain sins. So then, is your act of charity nullified? Is it useless? No, it is not. You are responsible for your deed, and they're responsible for their own. We learn in a hadith about, how a man intended to give sadaqah privately. So he went out and he, at night, in order that nobody would see him, and he gave, he put charity in the hand of someone. And then the next day, people were talking about how there was a prostitute and someone gave charity to her. The man realized that that was his charity, so he thought his charity was useless. So he intended again. He went out again the next night, he gave charity. Next day, people were talking about how a thief was given charity. So the man thought, I gotta try again. And then he tried again. The next day, people said, a rich man was given charity. So the man wondered what's going on. And he asked someone, and he was informed that, look, perhaps your charity to the prostitute prevented her from committing sin that night. And perhaps your charity to the thief prevented him from committing theft that night. And perhaps your charity to the rich man encouraged him to give from the riches that Allah has given him. So you are not responsible for the actions of people. Yes, you want to make sure that what you're giving is going in good causes, but remember that you are responsible for yourself. And لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ هُدَاهُمْ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَن يَشَاءُ. And this also shows us that, sometimes there are people who are close to us, whether they are relatives or close, or, co-workers or neighbors, etc., who may be in need. And even if they're not in need, they definitely deserve, gifts and acts of kindness from you. But you see that, for example, they're not Muslim, or you see that, they don't pray regularly, or you see that, they commit certain sins. So you intend never to give them any financial gift whatsoever. So it is made clear over here that no, you are not the one who guides. You are supposed to just inform people. And in this is also encouragement that you give to all people, even if they're, not Muslim, but, especially if they're relative, or they're close to you, they're your neighbors, then you should give them. وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَلِأَنفُسِكُمْ. And whatever good you believers spend is for yourselves. In a narration, we learn Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said that there were people among the Ansar who had, some relatives who were not Muslim. So they would not help them financially. Why? Because those relatives were not Muslim. And basically they were, sort of encouraging them that, if you become Muslim, then we will help you. So this ayah was revealed that no, don't, hold back from giving charity just because people are not upon guidance. When they're in need, then you should help them. And whatever good you believers spend is for yourselves. So, the benefit is for yourself. So even if it's a non-Muslim relative, you still give them. وَمَا تُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ اللَّهِ. And you do not spend except seeking the face of Allah. This should be your ultimate goal, the main reason why you give. When you're giving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, apparently it seems like what you're giving is going into some black hole, into oblivion. It's gone from you. It's lost. But the fact is that it is being preserved for you. When you deposit your money in the bank, you feel so confident and you feel so safe. And when we give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, we should have that sense of confidence and security. So here we are reminded that وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ وَمَا تُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ اللَّهِ. You are only giving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even, when we're giving zakat, let us give it for the face of Allah. When we're giving charity, let's give it for the face of Allah. When we're giving to a relative, to a friend, to a neighbor, whether Muslim or not, let's give it for the face of Allah. ibtigha'a wajhillah. That, Ya Allah, I want to see you. I want you to be pleased with me. And we learned that man tasaddaqa bi sadaqatin ibtigha'a wajhillah khutima lahu biha dakhala al-jannah. Whoever spends in order to seek the face of Allah and ends on that, meaning this is the intention from the beginning to the end, then such a person will enter Jannah. وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ يُوَفَّ إِلَيْكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تُظْلَمُونَ. And whatever you spend of good, it will be fully repaid to you and you will not be wronged. So this is a reminder that sadaqah does not reduce wealth. مَا نَقَصَتْ صَدَقَةٌ مِّن مَال. In fact, we learned that sadaqah increases wealth. We learn in a hadith that no slave, no person opens the gate of gift giving intending sila, meaning intending to join relations, except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will increase him. Meaning when you give a financial gift even to a relative in hopes that, this will mend your relationship, this will strengthen your bond, this will improve your relationship, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only increase you in goodness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only give you more. So just a reminder now, when we are giving sadaqah, let us diversify our charity. Don't just give it to, good people, people who are perfect in their religion. Also give it to, your relatives, your friends, people who are close to you, even if you don't really get along well with them. And remind yourself, I'm giving for the sake of Allah. I'm giving for the approval of Allah, and that is sufficient for me. Now in the next verse, we're taught another avenue where we should be giving. لِلْفُقَرَاءِ الَّذِينَ أُحْصِرُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ ضَرْبًا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Charity is especially for the poor who have been restricted for the cause of Allah. They're unable to move about in the land. Meaning, these are people who are first of all poor. And why are they poor? Why are they in need? They're in need because they are restricted for the cause of Allah. They have restricted themselves for the religion of Allah. Meaning they have dedicated their time, their energy, their work, their skills to serve the religion of Allah, to learn the religion of Allah, to defend the religion of Allah. And because a person only has 24 hours in a day, all of their time goes fi sabilillah, la yastati'una darban fil ard. They're unable to travel in the land. They're unable to move about in the land, meaning they're not able to engage in commerce, in trade, in any business. They're not able to go, work elsewhere to have a source of income because all of their time and energy is going into these causes. And what happens is that يَحْسَبُهُمُ الْجَاهِلُ أَغْنِيَاءَ. The ignorant person would think themselves sufficient. An ignorant person would look at them and say that, what? They've got enough. They don't have any needs. Why? Why do they think like that? مِنَ التَّعَفُّفِ, because of their restraint. Why? Because they don't go on asking people. They don't go on begging. They don't go on, asking that please financially help me. Then how do you recognize them? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, تَعْرِفُهُمْ بِسِيمَاهُمْ. You recognize them, you will know them by their characteristic sign. Meaning the sign of hunger is visible on the face of a person. The fatigue is visible. Hunger is visible. When you see that someone is wearing the same old clothes again and again, then it's very obvious that they are in need. When you see that someone's shoes are, old, then it's very obvious that they are in need. And it doesn't just mean that they're poor. It could also mean that they don't have the time to go buy something for themselves. But لا يسألون الناس إلحافا. The thing is that they do not ask people persistently. They don't beg people. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us to look for such people and spend on them. وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. And whatever you spend of good, indeed Allah is knowing of it. Now this verse is primarily talking about the Ashabus Suffah, meaning those companions of the Prophet ﷺ who used to live in the masjid, who literally had no homes in Medina. They lived in the masjid. Suffah is a bench, and there was a bench at the back of the masjid. So this is where, under which they would rest, and, their belongings were there. So they didn't have any homes in Medina. And they lived over there. Why? Because they had immigrated from different places to be with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they would dedicate their entire time to be in the company of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to learn from him. We learn how Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he was one of them. And he would dedicate his entire time to learning from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if there was any expedition, any battle, any journey that had to be taken, these people would go along with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they had no families, and they had no means of income, so they had no property. So how would they survive? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this ayah encouraging the Muslims to spend on them. But this ayah is not restricted to Ashabul Suffah. What this ayah is teaching us is that we should spend specifically on who, on what, on which causes, on the causes which are fi sabilillah, meaning which are for the religion of Allah. And I had mentioned this to you earlier as well, that when you give, for example, to feed a hungry person, you help only one person at only one time. And this is why our charity should not just be restricted to just feeding people. Feeding people is excellent. It's one of the greatest things that we can do. One of the first things the Prophet ﷺ taught when he migrated to Medina. However, we should diversify our charity, and we should also spend for the religion of Allah. Make sure that you give regularly to, for example, your local mosque, your local Islamic organization. One is that you pay the fees for the classes that you take over there, but that is not sufficient. Give more. Give some donation on a monthly basis, on an annual basis, whatever that you are able to do. But give for these causes, and don't wait to be asked. Don't wait for that fundraiser, because remember that you're giving it for your own benefit, for your personal benefit. And remember, when you spend on, for example, an Islamic institute, then this is this is something that of course will benefit you, but it will benefit your children, their children, generations, inshallah. The good, the khair, inshallah, will spread. So make sure that you diversify your charity. And then we also learn in this ayah about the importance of not begging people. لا يسألون الناس إلحافا. You see, ilhaf is to ask continuously, to beg continuously. Alaha alayhi is to harass someone, right? To basically attach yourself to them and persistently ask them. So this is not the correct way of asking for financial help. The first thing is that we should not be asking people, we should not be begging people for oneself, meaning we should not be asking people that help me. You can always ask people to spend on certain causes. So for example, if I were to ask you right now, give me money, that would be wrong. But if I were to ask you that, spend on, for example, such and such organization, such and such cause. And yesterday we discussed different ways, for example, app development, research, and today I mentioned to you masjid, Islamic organizations, places that you benefit from. Then this is something good. Right? This is something that is encouraged, that we should encourage each other to do good work. It is our responsibility to inform you, but it would not be correct that people insist and beg and harass to the point where people want to run away. They don't want to listen anymore, because in a hadith we learn that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes three things for you. Qeel wa qal, he said, she said, meaning always talking about what people are talking about. Secondly, ida'at al-mal, wasting money. This is also something Allah dislikes. Wa kathrat al-su'al, and asking too many questions or asking excessively. This is something that Allah dislikes. So la yas'aluna an-nasa ilhafa. Do not ask importunately. Do not ask naggingly, persistently. No, ask once and khalas. And then also we see over here, تعرفهم بسيماهم, that recognize a needy person or person in need by their appearance. Don't wait to be asked. Look for those whom you can help. Be observant. Pay attention. Yani, don't just be so lost in your own self that you don't recognize the needs of the people who are around you. So, لا يسألون الناس إلحافا. And then we see that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he actually took a pledge from his companions that they should not beg others. And we also learn the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam warned us that a person who persists in begging people that they should give him charity will come on the day of judgment and there will not be a piece of flesh on his face. And if a person begs others in order to just increase in his own money, then meaning that a person knows that, if I go ask this uncle of mine, come up with a sad story, I'll ask him, he'll give me $1,000, I go to that aunt and I tell her another sad story and she will give me some money. I'll go to that coworker, I'll go to my boss, my ex-boss, and I'll tell them all of these sad stories and then they will give me money, and by the end of it I'll have $10,000. This is forbidden. This is forbidden. And we learn in a hadith that this is like a person is gathering fire for themselves. So it is up to them whether they gather a lot or they gather a little. So these behaviors we should avoid, because it is not befitting that we should beg, that we should ask. But at the same time, we should not be waiting for people to ask us. Recognize the needs and help before even being asked. Then it is said, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. Those who spend their wealth in the way of Allah, how? By night and by day. سِرًّا وَعَلَانِيَةً. Secretly and publicly. فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. Then they will have their reward with their Lord. وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And no fear will be concerning them, nor will they grieve. Now, this is the concluding verse regarding sadaqah. So we are given another encouragement that we should give in the way of Allah. And this ayah shows us that we should actually make it a habit to spend in the way of Allah. We should spend in the night. We should spend in the day. Meaning, we should spend when our charity is visible to people, and also when it is not visible to people. So in public and in private. And this also shows us that we should give at all times, in all of our circumstances, whether we are experiencing a night in our lives, a dark time, a difficult time, or we are experiencing ease, a daytime brightness, meaning we have plenty. So do not restrict your giving to certain places, to certain times, only to certain causes. Rather, whenever an opportunity arises, seize it. In fact, seek out the opportunities when you can give, when you can spend in the way of Allah. Why? Because when you give, then remember, you benefit yourself. فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. They will have their reward with their Lord. عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. And remember, what is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that is great. That is massive. You see, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when he asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to teach him a dua, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught him to say a dua in which the phrase is that فَغْفِرْ لِي مَغْفِرَةً مِّنْ عِنْدِكَ. That, oh Allah, forgive me with the forgiveness from yourself. Why? Because the forgiveness that comes from Allah, that is huge. The favor that comes from Allah, that is huge. The reward that comes from Allah is huge. فَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. So those who spend consistently, regularly, they diversify their charity, they give for the sake of Allah, and they give all the time, night, day, openly, secretly, then such people will have a huge reward with Allah. وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And they will have no fear concerning them, nor will they grieve. We learn in the Quran that إن الذين يتلون كتاب الله وأقاموا الصلاة وأنفقوا مما رزقناهم سرا وعلانية يرجون تجارة لن تبور. Those who spend in the way of Allah openly and secretly are expecting a trade, meaning profits from a trade that will never perish, meaning everlasting reward. So remember that we personally benefit when we spend on others. We are saved from fear and grief. Giving brings us joy. And this joy is not just in this world, it is also in the hereafter. And now, these verses were about giving. The next verses are about the exact opposite way, which is the way of selfishly taking from others, being greedy. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ الرِّبَا, those people who consume interest. لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس. These people who consume interest cannot stand except as one stands who is being beaten by shaitan into insanity. Who? The people who consume interest. Now, what is riba? Riba literally means az-ziyada, increase. So basically, it is what a person gains by lending money. Riba is defined as kullu qardin jarra naf'an fahuwa riba, meaning every loan that brings a profit is actually riba, meaning the profit is interest. And remember, there are different forms of riba. So basically, a person is lending their money and then charging people on that. So what they charge, that is what? Interest. So this is, in this ayah, is a clear warning that the people who eat riba, this will be their outcome on the day of judgment. Now, those who eat riba have especially been mentioned. This doesn't mean that those who give riba are doing something permissible. Not at all, because the Prophet ﷺ cursed all people who are associated with riba. Those who eat it, those who feed it, those who record it, and those who are witnesses over it. And the Prophet ﷺ said they're all equal, meaning they're all equal in sin, because they're all cooperating with each other in sin and disobedience. But why is it that الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ الرِّبَا are mentioned? Those who consume interest, those who eat it, those who receive it have been mentioned. Because it is these people who primarily benefit from the system of riba. And if they would not take riba, if they would not charge riba, if they stopped taking riba, then no one would give it willingly. So, الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ الرِّبَا, those who receive riba, those who eat it are most hated. So, those who eat riba, لَا يَقُومُونَ إِلَّا كَمَا يَقُومُ الَّذِي يَتَخَبَّطُهُ الشَّيْطَانُ مِنَ الْمَسِّ. On the day of judgment, when people will be resurrected, how will the consumers of riba emerge from their graves? We learn in the Quran that at the time of resurrection, people will emerge from their graves rapidly. يَوْمَ يَخْرُجُونَ مِنَ الْأَجْدَاثِ سِرَاعًا. Rapidly, very quickly. But this ayah tells us that those who consume riba will not come out rapidly, meaning they will get up and they will fall. They will get up and they will stumble. Why? Because the riba that they had been consuming will be heavy in their bellies. It will be heavy in their bellies, preventing them from getting up, preventing them from standing straight, preventing them from moving forward. So they will keep falling. They will keep falling as if they are mad, as if they have been possessed by a shaitan. So this has also been interpreted as that they will stand on the day of judgment like majnoon, like someone who has been possessed by the devil. And someone who has been possessed by the devil, they're out of their senses. They're screaming wildly. They're in excruciating pain, as if they're drunk and completely confused. So this is how they will be on the day of judgment. Remember that the reward or punishment for a deed is always similar to the nature of the deed. In the world, those who consume interest act as if they are out of their mind. So they will be literally like that on the day of judgment. In the world, they are possessed by their greed for money, blinded by it. So they don't care to see what others are suffering from, what others are going through. They put others in excruciating pain, in fact, by demanding interest. So they will be put in excruciating pain. They will be out of their senses on the day of judgment. This will be their state on the day of meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If this is how they will rise from their graves, then what do you think is coming up next? Why such a severe consequence? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains, ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَا وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. That is because they say trade is just like interest. But the fact is that Allah has permitted trade and has forbidden interest. Remember that only an extremely ignorant person or a person who is choosing ignorance could say a statement like this, that trade is like interest. That you invest your money in a business and you make profit off of it, and like that you lend your money to someone and you profit off of that. No, this is not a logical comparison. Why? Because the profits from trade and interest from a loan are not the same. There is a huge difference between them. And any person who has basic awareness of how money works, how the economy works, and basic awareness of Islam would never say that the two are the same. How are they not the same? They're different in many ways. First of all, the first main difference is what is given over here, that وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا, that Allah has made trade lawful and Allah has made interest unlawful. And remember that the lawful and the unlawful can never ever be the same. There are matters which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has permitted, and then there are matters that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden. And these laws, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given us for us to pretend like everything is good. So do whatever you want. And everything is the same. There's no right, there's no wrong. Just do whatever works for you. No, if that was the case, then the revelation of the Quran would be useless. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not revealed His book to be ignored. Allah has not revealed this law so that people pretend as if it doesn't exist. The halal and the haram are not the same. Never forget this fact. There's a huge difference between what is lawful and what is unlawful. What is lawful, we are allowed to do it. And what Allah has made unlawful, we cannot do it. So how could these two be the same? So this is the first difference. Secondly, we see that interest is a fixed benefit that one makes by just sitting on their couch and just lending money. There is no risk, there is no work, there is no effort. And in contrast, when it comes to trade, when it comes to business, it requires hard work. You cannot just be sitting on your couch. You take huge risks. You're constantly monitoring the progress. The profits are not guaranteed and they're not on a fixed rate either. And then we see another difference between the two is that trade, business causes the economy to thrive. It provides opportunity to people so that their financial state improves. But interest only allows the rich to become richer and the poor to become poorer. Interest is the exploitation of those in need. And when it comes to trade, then trade, business provides opportunity for those in need. With interest, there's only injustice. How? That there are two groups of people. One group of people is of those who are working endlessly, who are constantly under fear and stress, struggling to make ends meet. And the other group is of those people who are just throwing money around as if it was water. And they're just, making more and more money and they're getting richer by the day, and other people are constantly suffering. So we see over here that such a severe punishment for who? For those who eat interest. And ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا. You see, this is because they say trade is just like interest. You see, one is that a person, accepts that yes, this is wrong and I should not do it. I know this is wrong, I should not be doing it. But there is another way, which is of stubbornness, of justification. And this is what is being reprimanded, that they say that trade is just like interest, meaning because of their wrong justification, it is because of their stubbornness that they will have this outcome. So this shows us that we should never use wrong analogies with ignorance to make the unlawful lawful for ourselves. And unfortunately, many people are guilty of this. They hear a few things about Islamic law and then they try to generalize it. And with that ignorance, they go astray and they lead others astray. Look at the severe consequences over here. When people say that interest is just like trade, then for the average person or for the person who doesn't know, he'll say, yeah, this is fine. Right? Yeah, once upon a time, perhaps interest was unlawful, but you know what? It's just like trade. Trade is permissible, so it should also be permissible. It's good. You see how this wrong analogy, by it, a person is going astray and leading others astray. And look at the outcome. Such a severe punishment on the day of judgment. And we see that people do this in many matters. For example, I heard someone saying myself that if you have acrylic nails or if you have nail polish on your nails, then wiping over them in wudu would be enough. Why? Because you know what? People, we're supposed to wipe over our heads. We don't wash our heads in wudu. So if wiping the head is okay, then you know what? Wiping the nails should also be okay. And by this, they go astray and they lead others astray. And this is a very, very wrong analogy. When it comes to wudu, remember, in the Quran, it is specified what is to be washed and what is to be wiped. And the Prophet ﷺ made that very clear, that what is to be washed cannot be wiped and cannot be left dry. So for example, we learn that when some people were making wudu, but they were not really paying much attention and they were leaving their, parts of their heels dry. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Wailul lil arqabi minan nar." Woe to the heels from the fire. Meaning, punishment, fire is for those heels which are left dry in making wudu. So let us not be blinded by our desires for acrylic nails and nail polish, that we start changing the manner of wudu and we start changing the laws of Allah just to suit our own desires. Because one is that you know that you're doing something wrong and you admit guilt, but the other is that a person doesn't admit guilt. They try to change the law of Allah. And this is why you see the consequences are so severe. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا. Severe punishment because they justified their wrongdoing. فَمَنْ جَاءَهُ مَوْعِظَةٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ فَانْتَهَى فَلَهُ مَا سَلَفَ وَأَمْرُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ. So whoever has received an admonition from his Lord and desists may have what is past, and his affair rests with Allah. So we see here that perfection is not expected from us, that we never ever err, we never make a mistake, that we are perfect in our knowledge and in our action. No, what is expected is that once we learn, then what should we do? We should change our course of action. We shouldn't become stubborn over there. So here it is clarified that whoever receives the admonition, meaning whoever finds out that riba is unlawful, and then they stop taking riba, they stop dealing with riba in whatever way that they were previously involved, then whatever has happened in the past has happened. But the matter rests with Allah. What does that mean? This means that it is up to Allah whether He forgives this person or not. So the least we can do is that we acknowledge that, Ya Allah, I know now and I am guilty. And we make the intention that, Ya Allah, I know now, I realize I'm going to stop this. I want to come out of this. But if a person persists and they justify, it is mentioned, وَمَنْ عَادَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. But whoever returns to it, meaning after learning about the prohibition of riba, still they go back to dealing with it, then those are the companions of the fire. They will abide eternally therein. And unfortunately, so many people will use these verses to prove that, you know what, it's okay for me to give riba, because what is condemned over here in the ayah is taking riba. So I'm not taking riba, I'm just giving riba. Well, how can we ignore the words of the Prophet ﷺ? Did he not say that the akil and the mukil of riba, meaning the one who eats it and the one who feeds it, are both guilty? They're both equal in sin? How can a person receive interest if he is not being given interest? So we cannot declare ourselves innocent of sin by saying that, you know what, I'm not taking it, I'm only giving it. Giving it is also wrong. So instead of becoming stubborn and instead of justifying it, let us acknowledge guilt and let us confess our mistake before Allah and seek His forgiveness and make the intention to come out of it. Because remember, the one who wants to come out of sin, the one who tries, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also helps them. But the person who justifies their sin, the person who makes false excuses, then how will they receive the help of Allah? And look at the severe warning that is given here. وَمَنْ عَادَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. So we see here that if a person has knowledge now, then they should not act ignorantly, because we see that that dealing with interest is a major sin, for which is the punishment of hell. The Prophet ﷺ described riba as part of as-sab' al-mubiqat, the 7 destructive sins. So this is not something small. And how severe is this punishment? Ashabun nar, companions of the fire. The Prophet ﷺ was shown this severe punishment. He said about how he, in his vision, he was shown that 2 men came to him and took him, and he was shown, different punishments. And one punishment that he was shown is that he said that I was taken until we reached a river of blood, where a man was standing, and on its bank was standing another man with stones in his hands. The man in the middle of the river tried to come out, but the other threw a stone in his mouth and forced him to go back to his original place. So whenever he tried to come out, the other man would throw a stone in his mouth and force him to go back to his former place. Meaning that person was being constantly tormented. And when the Prophet ﷺ inquired that who is this, he was later informed that this is the person who used to consume interest. And we also learn that riba is something that is despised. Yani, it is a sin that is not just major, it is despised. So we learn in a hadith that riba has 72 doors, 72 bab. What does that mean? That it is of different kinds. Its lowest form is equal to the sin of a man committing zina with his mother. And this is how serious it is. And we also learn that a dirham of riba, 1 coin of riba that a person consumes knowingly, is worse near Allah than 36 acts of zina. Astaghfirullah. When it comes to zina, illegal sexual intercourse, and this is something that we shudder at, that this is so wrong. How could a person ever do it? That this is not okay at all. And especially, in some Muslim cultures, when it comes to the matter of honor and dignity, and people become so, zealous over there. People become so violent even in these matters. Imagine 1 dirham of riba that a person consumes knowingly is worse than 36 acts of zina. So this is not a joke. The consumption of riba, the giving of riba, dealing with riba is not a small matter. But it's amazing how so many Muslims have made it lawful for themselves. You see, in our deen, we are encouraged to work hard. We are encouraged to provide opportunities for people, to give charity so that wealth circulates in the society. Because when wealth is concentrated in some segments only, over generations, and we see that certain other portions of society are living in poverty generation after generation, then this is something that has a real impact on people's sense of well-being, their psychology, their welfare, and even their health. Poverty doesn't just mean that a person cannot live in a nice house. Poverty means that even a person's health will be affected. So when riba is prohibited, why is it prohibited? Is it because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want you to have more money? No, He is Ar-Razzaq. He is Dhul Fadl Al-Azim. Riba is prohibited. Why? So that wealth circulates. So that the rich don't just keep getting richer and the poor don't just keep getting poorer. So work hard. And we see that riba is something immoral, it is unethical, it is something forbidden. And we have been encouraged to, work hard, use our strength to, make income. And when a person is just lending money and then charging people interest, then literally they could just be sitting at home doing nothing, and they're just profiting off of people's, struggles by exploiting the poor. And we see that riba is something that is punishable in this world even.